Hi there, Steve Kaufman here. Today, first of all, it's a sunny day. The sun's coming in through my window. It's a great day here in Vancouver. We've had some pretty wet and cool weather for the last little while. Steve Kaufman here. My blog is The Linguist on Language, and I talk about things related to languages and particularly language learning. Today my theme is, what does it cost to learn a language? And I was doing a lot of thinking about this today because today I ordered my iPad. So some of you may think that's a real extravagance. With all of whatever else they sold me on the website, it's $700 and some, which is a lot of money because I already have a BlackBerry, so I don't need it for my communication. And I'm buying it primarily for reading and language learning. This is going to be my language lab, my portable language lab, where I will be able to access all the content I want in different languages and import it into LingQ and save words and phrases and review them in flashcards and listen to content. In fact, do all the things that I do to learn languages. $700 and some odd. Today, I received here a freebie handout from Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver, and continuing education here. You know, here's the front page. Okay. Now, I don't know why they always put attractive people's faces on brochures. There must be discriminating against old geezers like me. They always have young, fresh, attractive faces on these brochures. Nevertheless, I look up their language area, and here we have English, all right? Immersion English, full-time, 3-month immersion English, $4,200 for 3 months, 25 hours a week, 5 hours a day for 3 months. Now, what's that person going to learn in 3 months for $4,200? And if that person travels from some foreign country and stays with a host family in Vancouver, which also costs a lot of money, and in many cases the host family is not even English speaking, but that's another issue, $4,200. Here's another thing I was thinking of, because I was reflecting on my spending $750 for an iPad. I thought to myself, if I traveled to Russia, and if the school there cost $4,200 per month, and I added in my flight to Russia and wherever I'm going to stay and whatever, accommodation, it would be an awful lot of money. I do want to go to Russia, but I'll go there and travel around and have a good time. Speaking of Russian, I was in Tucson 3 years ago, before I started studying Russian at LingQ. I went in the university bookstore, and all these university bookstores are phenomenal, like shopping centers where they sell you everything from t-shirts to sporting goods. But they also have great shelves of textbooks that the professors require people to buy. These textbooks aren't cheap. I was looking around for books on Russian because there weren't very many here in Vancouver. And all they had was a thing called Political Russian, which is this book. I've had the book for 3 years. It is a completely useless book. It has, perhaps 5% of it consists of political sort of text that I could find in any newspaper on the web today. And then it has a bunch of, reading exercises, pre-text, background, this report about National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice. Well, we can get that somewhere else. We don't need it here. Very little. They don't have a glossary. In fact, I have never used the book. It was $80 this cost. $80 out the window. And I gather from talking to people that it's quite common to spend more than $100 a semester on textbooks. That's a lot of money. So my iPad, and I think of my iPad, and I think of when I really got keen on language learning, late in my career. I mean, I've always had an interest in languages and I've learned them, but I got really fired up when I was 55 and I wanted to learn Cantonese living here in Vancouver. And I discovered the mini disc player, and I thought that was a revolution. And since that time, which is about a little less than 10 years ago, we've had the mini disc player followed by the MP3. We've of course had an explosion in what's available on the internet in terms of content, newspapers, magazines, novels, language learning, podcasts, you name it, a whole gamut of things. Link, of course. And then we've moved from the simple MP3 player to the iPod, to the whole development of iTunes, iTunes U, and now we have iPad, and we have literally thousands of people creating apps for every possible use, including language learning, for these tools. And that's just been in a period of 10 years. And yet, at the universities, very little has changed. They still have their lectures. They still, like here at Simon Fraser, they want to charge you $4,200 for 3 months of English in the classroom learning here in Vancouver. I mean, if I went to, I don't care, Bucharest, Romania to learn Romanian for 3 months, I wouldn't spend 5 hours a day in a classroom. And I sure wouldn't spend $4,200 for the privilege of doing so. I would listen, I would read, I would make friends, I would travel around. But of course, as many of you know, I would do a lot of work before I went there. And all of that can be done, again, via the internet, using iPod, iPad, MP3 player, you name it, and so forth. So nothing's changed. The universities are still charging this. They're still charging a fortune for textbooks like this. And I looked up on the internet, and what happens if you take a course and buy the textbook that the professor said you had to take, and then you decided not to continue with the course? Well, I think within 1 month you can sell it back or something. Then at the end of the year you can sell it back as long as the professor is still recommending that textbook, and as long as the textbook publisher hasn't come up with a new edition which makes yours obsolete. In the best of cases, you can sell it back for 50%, otherwise it's 25%, otherwise it's zero. So this is just money spent and wasted. Because what do you need the textbook for? I mentioned on my blog, Amazon sent me an email, and they said that here's this, because they keep track of what I'm interested in, they said here's this book for learning Chinese, a Chinese kaleidoscope, a collection of newspaper and magazine articles compiled by no less than 4 authors, 4 professors, to compile newspaper and magazine articles that are already out of date. They're no longer current. Presumably they have some explanations there, probably a lot of grammatical explanations that everyone reading that book has already been through and still can't remember, and it probably doesn't help them very much. $50 for that book. $50. So, that kind of triggered all this interest. People wasting this fortune on textbooks. Newspaper and magazine articles, I can have not every, but tens of, if not hundreds of Chinese newspaper and magazine articles at my fingertips. I can read them with an online dictionary. I can save the words and phrases at Link and presumably other systems. I can put them on Anki, review them in flashcards. I can find people on the internet to talk to, native speakers. What am I going to do with a $50 textbook, which probably only has, 20 chapters, 20 little articles? It's amazing. So, everything else has changed in the last 10 years. We've gone from when I was first studying language, we had the open reel tape recorder, went to cassettes, went to CDs, went to mini disc players, MP3 players, iPod, iPad. All that has changed, but we're still asking students to spend $50 or $100 or $150 on textbooks, and we're still charging, as in the case of Simon Fraser, $4,200 for a 3-month intensive course in English with no guarantee that the person graduating from that course will have improved their English significantly, or at least not to the tune of $4,200. Thanks for listening.